We have to really look at the complete hiring process and not just the external effort.
For a lot of these kind of big shakeups in the TA space or HR space, it requires a significant amount of buy-in.
Let's redefine what we call a talent pool and go after these groups of talent out there that may not seem on the surface like it's the right fit.
Pre-trained existed talent, those pools are pretty limited. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Talent Talk. I am very excited to have this conversation today with Israel Preston, who is an HR and TA leader in the manufacturing workspace. Israel, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm excited too. We have a lot on our agenda today to discuss. You have done some really innovative things throughout your career in the manufacturing space, some that I think all of our listeners are just going to really latch on to. A lot about non-traditional talent pools and how to open up doors through different kind of access channels. So excited to dive into a lot of that work and just hear what's been successful for you and how you've really kind of innovated in this space. So my first question for you is, and I'm sure you've felt this in your previous roles, but manufacturing leaders are being asked to do much more with much less, especially when it relates to high volume, high growth environments. So I'm curious, from some of your past experiences, what internal processes did you have to rethink or redesign to meet the demand without increasing risk or really burning out your skilled labor base?
Yeah. So, what I found is that we have to really look at the complete hiring process and not just the external effort, but really looking at how are we going to create more recruiter capacity without the benefit of adding headcount, right? And, or incremental headcount, as the ramp happens, but you're really kind of behind that. So you really need to create that capacity for the recruiter. And so that really led to us looking at, how we start selecting the candidate, how we engage with the candidate, how the hiring manager engages with us, and then how that system might support the team in automating some of those processes that the recruiter is doing over and over again. Like, can we make that something that's automated? Can we use AI to do those things? And so, that was really big for us, finding those big buckets of time where, the recruiter would spend a lot of time in that screening area, in the interviewing area, or chasing people for interview dates. Those things were really, okay, well, how do we really get ourselves some capacity in these places? And that's what we went after. And we created a really unique hiring process for the high volume space, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit deeper. But that was really what it was. It was, that whole hiring selection process. We need to find capacity for the recruiters so that we don't suffer quality, but we can keep up the pace, right? And that's really hard to do because those compete, right? There's a like, go fast, but then don't suffer quality. It's like, well, how would we do that? So it's really, and so it's really, you got to find the capacity so the recruiter has the time to qualify people accurately, but then we're still moving without suffering the delay. So, really is all about that.
You hear so many different AI tools that are out there that, in theory work really well, but then they take out a little bit of that personal touch that I think a lot of recruiters really enjoy about their jobs as well, right? I mean, recruiters are in it because they're generally people, right? And they want to have those relationships. They want to be part of that really exciting process. And so I think you're right. Like, how do you interject the right level of AI and support and tools while still kind of maintaining that kind of spirit within the recruiting job?
That's key. And the candidates, as well, right? Because, there's a lot of things happening with the video interviewing, and the AI can kind of tell you what's going on. You don't even need to be there. So, in some of those places, the candidates can feel very like a number, right? And not like this human connection, and we talk about culture and we boost culture, and our website is all about culture and this great place. And then all of a sudden they're interacting with a bot, right? And it's like, well, what's happening here?
Total
I was
disconnect.
a total disconnect, right? And so you definitely have to find the place where it makes sense and get that recruiter involved in the process where it's important to really give that candidate the experience that they need to qualify us, because that's really what's happening as well, right? And so you need to give space for the candidate to also qualify the business while we're doing that as well.
Yeah. Our company, Cengage, recently published a study on Gen Z in the workforce. And so much of what came out of that was not only connection with the mission, right? They want to feel connected to the work that they're doing each and every day. But I also believe that it's connection to the people, right? And that starts from your very first interaction, generally with a recruiter. So I think you're kind of on the sweet spot there with how do you balance those two different pieces. Yeah. So that's a great segue to my next question. I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but when you piloted a new interview assessment and process, and your focus was really on speed and quality, which, let's be honest, oftentimes feel like really competing priorities, but we hear it in TA all the time. Tell me a little bit about your pilot and what it kind of taught you guys in the process.
Yeah. So what we called it was scaled hiring, and it was kind of like it was one of those mad scientist moments where, I'm seeing something happening and I'm thinking, well, I feel like we can do this, but it was turning everything upside down. We were taking hiring managers from a one-to-one relationship to a group or team effort where we were utilizing hiring managers across a geographic area or a business unit to help us interview not necessarily the hiring manager in the room, right? But these were hiring managers who we trust to run the business. So we're going to trust them to make talent decisions as well. And so that was this trust-based hiring model that we interjected. And it was met with some resistance there because it was very, very different than what they were used to. But we needed to find the speed. And that was really slowing us down. And another piece that was really big for us was, I created a model around the recruiters where we essentially made a group of recruiters one recruiter. And so we took what a normal recruiter would do in a funnel and we chopped up those work segments, and we grouped recruiters in these segments. So like you would screen, you would submit to the hiring manager, you would schedule for interviews. And so those buckets, it really became a team instead of one recruiter kind of managing a group of candidates. What I did was say, hey, this is a job group that is fast paced. It's high volume everywhere around the globe. Let's take a group of recruiters that are specialized in this, and we called it a talent segmentation. So we segmented the talent based on the job profile. And so we took a group of recruiters and they would team. So project manager, one of the recruiters would be the project recruiter, and they would basically manage the hiring managers. And the hiring managers were not one-to-one. So we used a point of contact on the business side, one person that would tell us everything. So if the business changed, they would tell us. If we wanted to ramp up, run down, they would tell us. If all of a sudden a hiring manager on that side, their roles became very critical, they would tell us. We would not coordinate with each hiring manager, which again gave us the speed that we needed. And so, we took those recruiters on the front end, they would screen. That's what they did. And the others, screen resumes. So that first group would just screen those resumes, qualify them if they should be in. And this was before we finally got to the place where the system would do it for us. But we had to create that first and work with technology and say, hey, here's what our recruiters are doing. The system really should be doing this for us and giving us more capacity on the backside. But prior to that, the recruiters would do it. So they would screen the resume, hand it off to another group. They would be the ones calling folks, screening them, while the other team is still continuously kind of feeding in the resumes that should go these folks were scheduling those screens, and we were able to automate that piece where they could just put their calendar out and candidates would fill. So they would just screen daily. And then those folks would move over to our TA ops team, and we would ask the TA ops team, instead of the recruiter going chasing candidates for time, we would send them to the TA ops team, and they would handle that piece. And once they were scheduled, they would go into a bucket where the hiring manager team was just there. We didn't talk to them about schedules. We said, hey, we're interviewing on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Here are slots, right? You bring the team, we'll bring the candidates. And that's how we found that pace that we needed without suffering quality, because we gave people, a team of screeners, enough time to really screen and take the time to qualify the person before they move to the next level. So it was wild, a wild ride. That pilot taught us a lot, that we could work differently, essentially, and we didn't have to, work within the standard, processes and ways that we are accustomed to. And I came through the ranks as a recruiter, and so I really turned things upside down. I was like, I've never worked like this before as a recruiter, but I think it could work, and it did, and it was very successful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I love the mad scientist phrase, because it kind of is what you're talking about. Also, just so I understand, you're talking about getting different recruiters involved in one candidate's life cycle, right? So you're also removing a lot of bias there as well by getting a lot of different eyes on every single candidate. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment. It's more like we took a job family. So you would take a job family, and a certain group of recruiters were the only ones specialized to operate within that job family. And they would do it all, from front to end, right? And instead of each recruiter having a relationship with the managers, we had one that would kind of be that hiring manager, if you will, if things are popping up, things are issues. And instead of every recruiter having to go chase and run down those problems and solve those problems, that one project recruiter would fill those in and say, okay, do I need to really involve anyone? I can solve this myself. I'll go. Or do I need to get Israel involved? Let me pick up the phone. Right. So it gave everyone else time to just stay, processing and getting things done. Right. The work never slowed down. And that was the idea. Right.
And gave them that ownership, right, over that whole job family. Yeah, I love that.
It was huge, huge.
So talk to me about another, maybe it's this mad scientist moment, maybe it's another one, but for a lot of these kind of big shakeups in the TA space or HR space, it requires a significant amount of buy-in, right? I think from my own experience, when I was, trying to move a boulder up a mountain within the TA world, it's oftentimes like you're on a bit of a roadshow, right? You have to get buy-in from all the different business units, from executive leadership. Tell me a little bit about your secret sauce to getting the green light on some of these bold ideas.
Yes, I would say, in a word, proximity. You have to be close to the business or the business leader that you're working with to get that buy-in. You have to know it means something to them. And that might even mean staying closer to their boss, right? Their leader. What is their leader passionate about? That trickles down, right? And so that creates either stress or momentum or inspiration for that leader that you're dealing with. So you need to be close. So proximity brings that what I think is clarity for you to know what to do and what to sell, right? And so you really need to be able to talk to that business leader in terms of the problems that they want solved and how what you're doing is going to solve that problem, even if it doesn't seem like it's solving it directly. A lot of times we're dealing with the recruitment world is kind of like when the power goes out. The power company doesn't drive up to your house because the problem isn't there. It's downstream. So you may want to see those trucks and they make you feel really good to see that they're there. But if they're there, they're not solving the problem. And so the work for us is similar. You just need to tell that business leader where you're at, right? And once they understand that you're solving that problem from them, even though they don't see you where they think you should be, that's the difference, right? It's telling that story to them so that they're like, they don't live in our world, right? And so you have to go tell them, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And this is actually going to inadvertently change this for you, which solves your problem. And once that clicks, you have that buy-in. You need that champion, but you can't do that unless you understand what you're doing and how it impacts their business, right? You need to know that if I pull this lever, that's a trigger for this, right? And so even if you're going to cause some disruption, which a lot of times if you're really going after it, you're going to do, you need to understand that and get in front of it, right? And you go say, hey, business leader, by the way, I'm going to do this. This is going to, somebody's going to get upset. Your hiring managers might not like this right away, but I promise you it's going to work, right? This is what's going to solve this problem for you. But if you don't do that and you wait and that hits, it's a much different experience, right? Because if that leader sticks their neck out for you and is that advocate for you, and then all of a sudden their directs are all jacked up and pissed, right? I shouldn't say that, but if they're upset, that's not going to be good, right? It's not going to be good. Whether or not that's a good idea and you should be doing it, it just will not work. So I think proximity is a key to that, to help you really understand whether or not you should be doing what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting right down there in the weeds with them when you need to, right? To really kind of understand their experience, their goals, where they're trying to drive the business, and how you can really be collaborative with them. I love that. You mentioned disrupting kind of the business, and I think that's a perfect way to describe my next question, really. And so you have been very, very intentional, I'll say, about opening doors for non-traditional talent pools. Now, specifically thinking of the autistic candidate pool. Tell me a little bit about, first of all, tell our listeners all about the project that you embarked on here, and take us through some of the successes and learnings that you had by really opening up your doors to a very often overlooked, but very high quality talent pool.
Yes. So this was a really, probably one of the moments in my career that I'll never forget, is stand out for me the most. I had never worked with a neurodiverse group or considered the talent pipeline for manufacturing, right? It just like, well, that would never work, right? But when I was with a power manufacturer in Illinois, I came across an individual who was working in the community. It was a very small group, and he started talking to me about their program, and the specific program was with the autistic, and they were trying to find opportunities to bring them into a manufacturing workforce. And I thought, wow, that is very interesting, and I don't know that my VP or anyone would buy this, but talk to me more. And so as he explained it to me, I thought, hey, this is a talent pool that I think we're just overlooking, because there's some just biases out there around, right, the neurodiverse that exists, that we're just not going forward because we don't know what we don't know. And so I talked to my VP, HR VP, which she was really kind of the mover for this. And as I talked to her, got her on board, we talked to the organization, she thought, wow, this is really something I think can change, because we were having a problem with finding that talent, right, for the manufacturing environment, and like the pace at which we needed to bring that talent in. So we decided, hey, I'm going to start small. We talked to the CEO. He gave us the green light to do a pilot. It was very, very small. I think it was 1 or 2 people. We had to go through a process of training prior to those individuals coming. So that was on our floor, on our manufacturing floor, with our supervisor and operation, to understand, like, hey, we're bringing in a new type of employee here, and here are some of the things that you may see differently with them, and here's how we need to interact, and the do's and don'ts and all that. So we actually did a kind of a stand down, if you will, for a few weeks prior to launching the pilot, so that we were sure that the folks in the environment were trained right and understood what we were doing, even though it was very small. But we started with the 2 individuals, and they came in, and we set them up in kind of like the front end of our manufacturing, and uh, this was an environment where we had to really be particular about where our tools were and like Six Sigma and those types of things. And it was phenomenal. They came in and they took to that manufacturing process and methodology so quickly, and the output was double what like multiple people were doing. And we didn't like we were like it feels like we're making this up if we go say this to the business like this. They're like, no, you just want to do this. But it was like, no, here's the data that we went and got the data. Is like, this is amazing. And so we got to the table with the CEO and said, hey, here it is. And he's like, great, let's bring it to the executive board. Let's talk to them about it. Let's see, if we get the buy-in. And so I talked to my VP and I'm like, hey, I know like we have a really strong engineering group in there. They are really all about degrees and like super engineers. Like this is like you're never going to go.
Not that.
Yeah, this is never going to happen. And she's like, I got this, right? And I'm like, all right. So I got in the room. I didn't say a word. She led the conversation, and I mean, there was some pushback, and she stood her ground in there and said, listen, I have been in this organization as long as you have. I'm all about the success of this organization. I believe in it. My reputation is on the line here, and I think it can work. And after that, it was kind of like, all right, let's try it. And I mean, it's a program that are still running today. It was phenomenal. And so I think for me, it was just that reaching beyond what we think is, talent pools, what we think of as talent pools, and really considering like what is a talent pool, right? Like let's redefine what we call a talent pool and go after these groups of talent out there that may not seem on the surface like it's the right fit, right? But the abilities that they have, the skill sets that they have, we just overlook because we're not taking the time to really consider the positive outcomes that we could have by taking a little time, putting some skin in the game, right? Risking a little bit of reputation to make something happen that you believe in. But that I think is the difference maker for the manufacturing environment as a whole. We really have to rethink how we look at talent and where that talent is actually coming from. Even internally, I think if we're looking at people who are in jobs, how are we really sourcing our internal talent and saying, hey, that person, I mean, think about it, how many people get a degree and go into a completely different profession, right? So you have some talent sitting there, this trained talent that you may not even know, right? You can pull them and say, hey, by the way, you got a degree in this area. We could really use you over here. Have you ever thought about it, right? And those are the types of things we have to do to really make a difference in how our talent pools are created.
I think that's such a beautiful way to think about it. And it's so valid, especially now when talent is limited, right? Like pre-trained existed talent, those pools are pretty limited. And so manufacturers that are going to get ahead are the ones really thinking creatively. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is really so important is that you also invested in making sure it was going to be successful, not like putting someone in this environment hoping they could figure it out, sink or swim. You actually took the time to do a little networking, do a little consensus building on the shop floor to make sure everyone knew how to best support these individuals and what different challenges might be presented, what different benefits will be presented, right? And really getting that shop level buy-in, I think, is so huge. Like we see that, especially when we're bringing in non-traditional talent pools outside of manufacturing, putting them through educational programs and getting them into this workforce. They're not going to be, a maintenance tech with 10 years of experience and a whole bag of tools, right? They might have a couple tools and this is their first time on a shop floor. So that orientation, those first 3 months, so critical to make sure that they feel that they're set up for success and everyone around them is rooting for them. And I think that's a beautiful example of how you did that. And obviously it's translated into explosive growth within that program and really sustaining it for many years, which I think is it's just so touching and so wonderful.
Oh, I love that's like I said, it stands out as one of those moments in my career, and I can't take any credit for it. I had that individual not reached out to me, I would have never known, right? I would have been ignorant of that. But it gave me
Well,
an
hey, it took a
opportunity to really do
champion to get it
something I
across the
thought was
finish line,
special.
and I
And
think you
then
should
as
take a
I
little bit of
talked to
credit.
different,
I'll just say that.
well, thank you. And but what's special is sometimes I'll come across friends or different people, and I'll talk about it, and it just moves them because they have someone in their family who's autistic, and they see like, wow, like they could actually work in a multi-billion-dollar organization, and like, yeah, it's actually a real thing, and so there, when I see someone move like that, that makes it special, for me. So it stands out as probably one of the greatest achievements in my career.
I love that. Well, Israel, thank you so very much for spending this time with me today and sharing a little bit about your background and all of these amazing programs that you were able to mad scientist your way into. If any of our listeners would like to get in touch with you, is LinkedIn the best way for them to reach out?
Yes, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat and share war stories. I love talking that.
I love it. I love it. I know the community in down in Alabama in manufacturing is very rich as well. So if anyone is down in Alabama, that's where he's currently located. So feel free to reach out and hear a little bit more about Israel's story and some of the work that he's done. But that's all we have today for this episode of Talent Talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time.